Hola talentos y bienvenidos a Blockchain Land at Home. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos nuevamente. Recuerde que esta y todas las pláticas las pueden volver a ver en nuestro canal de YouTube y también en la parte de On Demand. Y nos pueden seguir ya sea en YouTube o en redes sociales como Talent Republic. Y ahora vamos a pasar a una entrevista muy interesante sobre un tema que últimamente ha causado mucho interés, que es la inversión y sobre todo lo que se llama la inversión institucional dentro del espacio de Bitcoin y criptomonedas. Y para esto nos va a acompañar directo desde Genesis Trading, León Marshall, quien es director de clientes institucionales y trading dentro de Genesis, el cual es uno de los OTCs más grandes del mundo y también parte de Digital Currency Group, el cual es uno de los fondos de inversiones más grandes en el mundo y donde también ha participado con diferentes empresas en el mundo, incluyendo México y Latinoamérica. Leon, thank you very much for being with us in Talentland. Thank you very much, Genesis Trading, also for sharing your knowledge about this space and also institutional trading. Welcome to Blockchain Land at Home. If you wish, if you can give us a brief intro about yourself and also about Genesis Trading.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you very much for the invite. I'm really excited to be here as a part of Blockchain Land, and I appreciate the opportunity to discuss Genesis. So, Genesis, we are a full-service cryptocurrency prime broker headquartered in New York. We have offices in New York, London, and Singapore. I'm personally based out here in London, but travel frequently between the three of them. And what do? Well, we really focus on a number of key verticals in the space. One, OTC trading, institutional lending, derivatives, and custody. And so we began our business back in 2013. Back then we were the first trader to operate outside of a broker-dealer in New York. And then since then, we've grown to be not only one of the largest OTC dealers, but also the largest institutional lending desk. We sit as a wholly owned subsidiary within Digital Currency Group, and we can talk a bit more about Digital Currency Group later. But our sister company is Grayscale, which is the largest asset manager in the space, CoinDesk, the largest cryptocurrency media firm in the space, and also DCG Foundry and Luno, which respectively are the largest mining pool in North America and a massive frontier exchange. So that's a sort of high level where Genesis sits and what we do.
That is awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that information. In Mexico and Latin America, people don't know much about this institutional trading, and also it's something very niche. But it's something that inevitably we see that it's growing and it's coming not only in regions like in like you said, London, Singapore, and United States, but also in regions like Latin America. And I wanted also to know if you service any customers in Latin America and Mexico, or if you have plans to service customers worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So we're very much global, and we have clients who are located in Mexico. We have clients who are located in Latin America. So one of the things that we found is that there's a very strong retail presence there. And whilst we're institutional focused only, we deal with a number of the retail aggregators located locally in those regions. So definitely very excited to continue and to grow that business. And I guess one of the interesting things that we're seeing now is a transition from not only facing those retail aggregators, but also looking to face investment managers, traditional institutions, large family offices who are also located in those regions. And so that's something that we can talk about in a moment, but that's how we've seen that client segmentation progress recently.
Yeah, recently, and I think 2021, it has been one of the greatest years for Bitcoin and also for cryptocurrency market. And we've seen a number of success. First of all, the market cap of Bitcoin going through $1 trillion, which is very relevant. That's like the size of the Mexican economy and bigger than most countries in the world. Also, the cryptocurrency market is $2 trillion, which is also a big number, and which looks like it doesn't seem like it's gonna stop. Like there's lots of institutional interest and also companies. And also what we've seen besides the market cap is the validation of this big and important companies, public companies like Tesla, also Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy announcing this big buys of up to $1 billion of Bitcoin and more companies coming in to do this strategy. How do you see this? Is this something that you see as mere speculation? Do you actually see this companies with an interest of using this more as an asset, or actually having here for the long run?
Yeah, no, look, it's a great question, and it's certainly been a wild run over the last few months. I think it would have been very hard in September of last year to have predicted the run that we've been on for the last 6 months. It's been incredibly exciting over here at Genesis. And, one of the things that we've focused on ourselves to meet this growing demand is to increase, our hiring and coverage globally across sales and trading and technology. So we're certainly ramping up to meet that demand from our side. When you look at firms like, say Tesla and MicroStrategy, I think what you're seeing is this move towards traditional corporate treasuries, diversifying that base into digital assets. So that's the trend that you're seeing, and that's a trend you're seeing globally, not just in North America, but in other countries. We've had a lot of requests and dealt with clients there too. What sets Genesis apart here is that we are not only able to offer the purchase and the sale, but also we work well with those clientele who want to lend Bitcoin back to us, and so we can offer a yield through our large institutional desk. And the final bit, which is important to note, and another reason why I think this is not a one-off, but rather is a long-term trend, is that you're seeing a lot of fintech firms operate in the space, not only from the digital asset narrative, but also from the remittance and payments aspect. And this is one area where I guess Mexico is particularly interesting.
Yeah, and also something very interesting that we're seeing also governments, local governments, even federal governments, not having such a bad perception now about Bitcoin. For example, we've seen the cases in the United States of Miami and Texas, which has made an incentive for migration. Do you see also the governments from different countries, or local governments, state governments, municipal governments, maybe also looking into these types of strategies? And I mean, not only Bitcoin, maybe other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, so I think what you're seeing in general is a de-risking of the asset class amongst a number of levels. There is the high regulatory level, which you're referring to, and I think the days of Bitcoin being banned in the US, I think there's a very low likelihood of that being the case. That was non-zero a few years back, and that was a major risk factor for entities like ourselves running the kind of business that we do. I think the likelihood of that now, of Bitcoin being banned in the US, is relatively small. And what I think you're seeing in other countries in the world now is, in general, a secular shift towards, well, look, what is this thing? How do we regulate it? How do we tax it? How do we ensure that AML and KYC policies are adhered to and respected by the firms in the space? So I think that's the conversation that's being had now across the world, both with major financial institutions and also with local regulators. And we're certainly a part of those conversations at Genesis.
Yeah, you also mentioned, well, about the other companies are being part of DCG, which also brings another interesting company for the investment side, which is Grayscale. Grayscale, since 2013, has been one of the first Bitcoin funds, and has also made various attempts to have ETFs. They even have quotations in Nasdaq OTCs, and have made different regulatory approach to list these products. And now it has been a great success. I mean, during this last year, it has had a huge growth in their assets under management, surpassing in 2021 $50 billion, which, of course, for the asset managers and for the ETFs and for the mutual funds and for the regular market has to make some noise. Is there also this type of players trying to make products with you, who wish to replicate? And if you see this type of product also being the way for institutional investors to make a faster run into Bitcoin?
Yeah, that's a great question. The team at Grayscale, who we know obviously very well, they are our sister company, and as you mentioned, they manage a very large number of assets in the space. By easily the largest asset manager in the crypto space. They've done a phenomenal job, and I think what you've seen a lot of other firms say, well, look, how do we achieve a similar level of success? I think what makes Genesis unique is that we're able to operate both with entities that we have close relationships with, like Grayscale, but also we're agnostic, and so we work actively with other firms in the space that have exchange traded products. I do think that if and when an ETF product in the States is released, I think that will be a game changer, because what that will really do, it will enable a brand new client segment to invest in the space according to their existing mandates. And I think that's really the key piece. I think that that there's obviously going to be a lot of change internally, whether at the level of the SEC. But I think one of the really encouraging things that we've seen ourselves is that the regulators certainly know the space well, and I think that there is definitely a move towards being as accommodative as possible, whilst also ensuring that consumers are protected. So in general, I think the picture is pretty rosy, and I think that if and when we do see an ETF, that will be a game changer.
Great. And you mentioned also the institutional lending, for example, and we've seen that with decentralized finance, and so also with CeFi, centralized finance, and different platforms like, I don't know, Celsius, BlockFi, etc., that have worked very well for retail customers and have had also a big growth in their assets under management. Is this also the case for Genesis in institutional trading? How big is this market? Is it also taking off like the OTC?
Yeah, well, one of the things I can share today is that we have an institutional loan book which is the largest in the space currently, and that sits at over $10 billion worth of assets that we currently lend to market participants. That is significant. And I think that one of the reasons why our partners and clients choose Genesis is because that we're not only the first in the space, but we've had a long track record of no capital losses or defaults or liquidations since inception. And I think that's one thing that really does set us apart. That said, I think that the space as a whole has behaved and acted in a way which has been consistent with the amount of risk that there's involved in the space, right? So what does that mean? That means that when we issue a loan, we in general will be looking to do so in an over collateralized manner, right? When we deal with counterparts, we deal with only the highest credit quality counterparts we could possibly deal with in the space. And I think what that means is that over time, counterparts and clients get more comfortable dealing with a company like Genesis, and we begin to attract, the types of counterparts that you might more normally associate with the traditional financial sector. So I think that's one reason why our loan book is as large as it is today. And I think that what I think the next phase from here is, well, look, how do traditional financial institutions get involved in the space? Who do they partner with? Who do they work with? And those are conversations that we've had in the past and that we continue to have today.
Yeah, and you mentioned the different service, OTC lending, and also how sister companies can give other different services and products. And from what I see is like this would be the equivalent, let's say, of a financial group. When you have only a bank or when you have only a stockbroker, you're just an institutional an institution, a financial institution. But when you bring all this together, you become a financial group in which you can serve. Do you see? I mean, regulation in every country is different, but overall, do you see, for example, more of companies like Genesis and Grayscale becoming regulated financial entities and competing directly with banks, or do you see this flexibilizing or trying to become something apart?
Yeah, I mean, I would almost look at it slightly different. Not so much that we're looking to compete with banks, but the really game-changing thing about this technology is that it enables the things that regular customers and consumers are trying to do, i.e., get a decent yield on their savings, send money between, say, Mexico and the US, let's say payments, to have a bank account and not pay much money for the bank account. It enables all those things to take place in ways which are transformatively cheaper, quicker, and more efficient. And I think that is the big transformative change. It's not quite yet, I think, at the sort of Genesis versus the other institutions. It's more, I am sitting in Mexico City. I have only a small amount of dollars. Guess what? I can save those dollars. I can get a great yield on those dollars through local players, and that those local players can face firms like Genesis, who can be back end providers of yield and liquidity, ultimately feeding through to that retail segment. I think that's the transformative piece here, and I think where that goes forward for a company like Genesis in the future is it can go many ways. But I think that's the part that is actually changing people's lives and changing the way finance takes place.
Great, and I mean, all this assets under management. We talked about 10 billion in institutional. OTC also makes big trades, 50 billion in Grayscale, etc. Similar to exchanges, for example, there are best practices and services that you give to your customers. For example, custody and safeguarding their assets. Can you tell about what are the services and what you offer in this side? Because I mean, there must be also many customers who have no idea about how to handle this technology.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, listen, if you're sitting in Latin America now and you work at an institution or you know someone who does and they're thinking about entering in the crypto space, one of the advantages that they will have working with a firm like Genesis is that we are able to operate in many of the verticals that are important for clients to achieve their financial goals. So, for example, if they're looking to trade, where do you custody after you trade? Well, we recently bought a custodian in the UK called Vault, and that serves as our custody arm called Genesis Custody. We're also seeking a trust company license as well. Can they get a yield on the Bitcoin that they purchase? Well, yes, they can. Can they get a yield on dollars they have in treasury? Yes, they can. Can they trade structured products or options around their Bitcoin holdings or positions? Yes, they can. So one of the advantages they have is they can work with us along those different verticals. And then maybe finally, it's important to note that that handling digital assets is scary for folks who have never done it before, right? These are bearer assets that if you mess it up and send it to the wrong place, it's gone. So one of the things that we focus on, and it's important for us, is that high touch service, not only when executing a trade with us, whether it's on our lending or derivatives or trading desk, but also on the custody side too. A lot of our processes there are intentionally designed to ensure that there is someone else on the end of the phone to help you transact. And so I think that's something that does set us apart. And if there are institutional partners and players in the South Americas region that are focused on that, then that's something that we'd be happy to speak to them on.
Yeah, and well, also you don't only operate Bitcoins, you operate different cryptocurrencies, some of the largest ones and the most popular ones too. But we also are seeing, as we see different tokens, different, let's say, type of asset class like we have seen lately with this great boom that has been happening, for example, in NFTs, in which we've seen, for example, people being auctioned at $69 million, etc.
Right.
Is this a value business that you would be also interested in?
Well, that's a great question. I think that the time for Genesis to be operating in NFTs might be a little bit further in the future. But look, I think that kind of innovation, it always starts out in a way where at first these things seem weird, and the idea of operating with it as a financial asset seems very remote. But one of the things that I've learned, in the years that I've spent in the space is that, that actually quite quickly these things can both adopt, value, but also adopt use. And so, whilst I do think that NFTs might be a little far off for us, to accept as credit, we need a sort of deep two-sided liquidity pool operating 24/7, which Bitcoin has. But look, I think that whether or not we operate in another area is certainly very interesting, and something that we'll definitely be watching in the future.
Yeah, and also in 2021 we had Coinbase, the first company that got listed in Nasdaq, which was a great event, and its valuation even went into the first day up to $100 billion, which I personally think it will become a trend. For example, in companies that are already, for example, in portfolio of DCG that already have this track record, and it will continue to happen. Undoubtedly, this will bring more people in, and there's a lot of bullish people. But there's also this other side, which is a very volatile market, and we've had this last weeks with a very big bull run, one of the largest in the last years. And there is also a risk of losing quite a lot of money. Do you get involved into this type of a strategy with your customers? Each one handles it. I've seen stockbrokers, when everything panics, how you start receiving phone calls, emails, communication, etc. Do you go with them? Are you part of the strategy, or how do you handle this?
Yeah, sure. So Genesis is operating as a digital asset broker, so not as an equity broker. But I think in terms of the significance of the Coinbase IPO, the Coinbase listing, I think that I think yesterday really was a seminal event. I think what it has done is brought the cryptocurrency space to not only to the front of people's inbox in terms of, wow, look at the price of Bitcoin, isn't that amazing? But actually now what you are beginning to have is a set of single stock equities that asset managers globally can invest in to get exposure to the space. That you can look at Coinbase and take traditional metrics that you might use to normally value an exchange, and value Coinbase and come up with a fair market value. And once I think folks begin to see that this thing is actually real, and that there are actual traditional valuation metrics you can use to value the stocks or companies in the space, I think it goes another step towards normalizing the asset class in the eyes and the minds of asset allocators, investment managers, of all stripes within the traditional financial sector. So I think that's seminal in that mental shift. And I also think it's just another nail in the coffin to the idea that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are going to disappear. They're not. They're here to stay. And the real question for individuals, and that's the beauty of this space, right? You can get involved as an individual and as an entity. I think the real question is, well, what is your strategy? Like, what are you going to do from here? Are you going to hold nothing? Are you going to get involved in the equity side? Are you going to get involved in yield through Genesis lending? What's your plan? And maybe none of the above, and that's okay too. But I think what the Coinbase listing does is it really does ask the question, and that question has to be answered in some way.
Great. We're almost running out of time. I want to thank you very much for being with us. I would also like you to tell us where can people know more about Genesis, contact you, and see everything that we talked about?
Yeah. First of all, real pleasure being here. I'm really honored to be a part of this. Thank you for the invite. Contact me at leon@genesistrading.com. That's all one word, genesistrading.com. Or check out our website, which is genesistrading.com.
Thank you very much for being with us, León Marshall, Head of Institutional Sales at Genesis Trading. Thank you very much for being also with us, Talents. Muchas gracias, Talentos, por acompañarnos en esta interesante plática y seguimos con la programación. Y muchas gracias a León Marshall.
Muchas gracias.